Number one is digging a hole and burying all your weeds or your wandering dew, or in this case scurvy weed, in a hole in the ground. This is just to show you what you do, but really ideally you need to dig a slightly bigger, deeper hole and then simply cover it up and leave it. But you need to make sure you have covered every single little skerrick of weed that you can see, or it's likely to sprout up again. And if you're going to bury your waste like this, you want to remove all the seeds first, because the seeds can lay dormant in the soil and eventually find their way to the surface and one day sprout and become another weed. So this requires work. You've got to keep digging holes. Number two is soaking your weeds in water. This is fine if it's a very small amount of weeds, but if you have a large quantity of weeds, this will just not be sufficient. However, it is excellent for soaking the seeds, to kill your seeds. If you want to stir it every now and then, you can, I don't bother. And then at some point you can scoop this out and bury it in a hole in the ground, or put it through a strainer and then bury it. And then you've also got this beautiful juice left over that you can dilute and pour back on your garden. Number three is inside an eco-eze compost. But I personally don't find this method very efficient. One, because you can't fit a lot of weed waste in there, and two, if you've got a very, very persistent weed that will easily regrow, it can regrow inside here if it gets wet. But if it works well, look at that beautiful soil you get. You can also put your weeds in there and then cover it with grass clippings or dirt. There's a little worm I just nearly killed. So that you're getting the best then of both worlds, but you can only fit a very small amount of waste in here. So for me, you're better off keeping your eco-eze composter for your food waste and dispose of your weed waste in one of the other methods. That's not to say you can't do it this way. It's fine if it's only a small amount of waste. Number four, to me, is the best and easiest efficient way to get rid of weed waste in your garden. Just get an old bin like this with holes in the bottom, cut the holes in the bottom, or get a nice pot like this, fill it with all your weed waste and then cover it with grass clippings or dirt. I have found from the tests I did the grass clippings were better because they mat together and they prevent any weed waste from growing up. And this one I've had sitting out in the backyard for a while now, and you can see it's breaking down beautifully. This method is fast compared to, say, tumblers or Jedis, those sorts of composters, and you don't have to turn it. You just stick it somewhere in the garden and let it rot down all by itself. And if you want to top it up, top more waste in on top, and then make sure you cover it again with more soil or dirt and just leave it, or move it around the garden, wherever you want it in the garden to nourish your plant. All those nutrients are going to go down into the soil, and this will just keep dropping down, and you just keep topping it up. If you want to empty it, you'll know when is a good time to empty. You can pick out the good soil and fill it up with the remainder of the waste, add more to it and start again. So this is the same as the bin. I've just chosen a nice pot to put it in, and this is a very tall pot. You can get whatever size pot you like. Oh, I can tell that's breaking down beautifully underneath. I'll just leave it there. I've got plenty of room I can top that up with now. I could top that up with that other weed waste I've collected there in the wheelbarrow. The first time I collected the waste in the wheelbarrow, it went really wet and rotted very quickly, and it started to rot out the wheelbarrow. But this particular batch I collected has actually gone dry. So I think it might depend on the weather, because the first one I collected was during the floods and it was very high humidity and lots of water around, and I think that's why there was so much moisture in the plant when I first cut it off. So you can do it that way if you've got a small amount of waste like that, but just make sure you check it that it's not rotting out your wheelbarrow. Here are my bays in the backyard, showing you how the wandering dew or scurvy weed just takes over everything. This was mowed the other day. I'll have to put a pointer on the video to the clumps of the wandering dew that have been mowed in this part of the garden, and I'll show you the part where it's really taken over. This part is after I whippersnipped it all, but it is literally overgrown this backyard and it's a nightmare to maintain. And if I want to get rid of it, I've got to go and dig up all those little plants individually. This is more what it looked like. You can see how tall it is there. That's what it looked like across the whole of this back section of the backyard. A nightmare to eradicate. The only time I'd recommend using this stuff is if you wanted to cover a large area of barren soil that you weren't going to mow or tend to, and that way it would grow up and be a good soil erosion inhibitor. But otherwise, do not let this plant get a foothold in your garden. Now these 2 bays at the moment are quite flat because I flattened the Scurvy plant to try and get it reduced, but it just keeps coming back bigger than ever. I think the only thing stopping it at the moment is the heat and no rain. This bay here is where I've tried to smother it with grass clippings. I'll give you a closer look. There's 2 lots of grass clippings on here now, and you can see even with all of that, oh cat! Even with all of that, one of the plants is trying to regrow. See that? That's what I mean. It takes nothing. Puss, stop it. That's why I mean it takes nothing for this to grow. It will just grow anywhere. So it'll take a long time for this to break down now. And hopefully that will get rid of it, and hopefully at the end I'll get some beautiful soil out of it. Oh, we'll see. And the bonus method is put a compot inside a pot plant container. So not only can you get rid of your weed waste, you can get rid of your food waste as well. Put your compot in there so it's below the top of the rim so you can cover it with grass clippings. And this particular pot I've covered with half grass clippings there, and I've left this part open so I can show you what I did. If you cover all this with soil around the outside, leave this open for your food waste, you'll get the same result as you'll get if you use just the pot plant on its own or an old rubbish bin. I'll fill this up with food waste now. You can see I've got a whole bunch of waste there. I'm not being particular. I need to get a bit of water to flush that out, but I won't bother, so I can finish this video. And there you have it. So you can get the best of both worlds this way. Cover that then with grass clippings. You get rid of your weed waste around the outside, your food waste on the inside. And if you want to empty it out at some point when it's all turned to soil, you'll get all that bonus soil as well. Otherwise, just keep moving this around your garden to any spot you want, and it will nourish any plants you want in the garden, and just keep dropping down and everything will keep going back into the soil. So to me this is the best way, but you can choose whichever way you want. Thanks for watching.